Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is S.C. Coleman, author. Today in this video, we're going to be talking about something called the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, or ICANN. Now, each of these documents is going to proceed chronologically to establish the development of ICANN, what its true purpose is, and how it's, at least according to these documents, structured. Might be missing some different pieces or whatnot, but this is essentially the extent to my research in this area at this time. So this is called a Network Working Group. S. Bradner, Harvard University, September 1999. A Memorandum of Understanding for an ICANN Protocol Support Organization. The Internet Society, 1999. This MOU creates the Protocol Support Organization, PSO, within the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. Jorge Contreras of Hale and Dorr. It's listed as quote-unquote helping. To me that sounds like, of course, a attorney group or something like that. As I said before, this is the year 1999. Now what's interesting is the Memorandum of Understanding is dated July 14th, 1999. But this particular document is September 1999. It's going to be a consensus-based advisory body. That's the tagline or the quote type. That's their cover story. Standards Development Organizations. This is the Protocol Support Organization. Size: each signing SDO will appoint 2 members to the Protocol Council, each member to serve for a time period determined by such signing SDO. Each signing SDO must notify the Protocol Council Secretary and ICANN when it changes its membership. Any meeting of the Protocol Council may be by telephone conference in which all participants can hear the others. The Protocol Council will have a secretary to coordinate the administrative matters. The secretary's term of office shall be 1 year. The Protocol Council will appoint directors to the ICANN Board of Directors. ICANN will notify the Protocol Council of any vacancies on the ICANN Board which may be filled by the Protocol Council. ICANN directors selected by the Protocol Council may, but need not, be members of the Protocol Council or any SDO. No more than 2 PSO nominated directors may be residents of the same geographic region as defined in the ICANN bylaws. There will be here under policy development, institutions must be directly involved. Well, here's what the paragraph states. In the tradition of the Internet, standards development policies and conflict resolution mechanisms should be created and utilized by those institutions most directly involved. One has to wonder what that means. Without undue interference from centralized bodies. So yes, with interference from centralized bodies, as long as it's categorized as being due. That's what that means. It also lists a protocol parameter assignment. The quote General Assembly. They love using that word a lot. It's kind of annoying. It just means a gathering for any particular purpose. That's what General Assembly means. It means you're assembling for any particular purpose, but they use it as the sort of like titulary thing where a General Assembly is like a formal, specific type of meeting or something that people get together under particular regulations and rules and whatnot. And it's really not what that word's supposed to mean. All interested individuals. Wonder what that means. The major organizations will provide the constituency. In the event that ICANN requests that a communication be kept confidential, the Protocol Council will honor this request for a fixed period of time not to exceed 1 year, and then make the communication public. Wonder how public, of course. All meetings reported on the publicly archived mailing list accessible through the PSO website. And like I said, this is 1999, so this will be considered outdated, as we'll see in a minute. The schedule and agenda, at least 90 days in advance. SDOs must be international, can demonstrate if individual memberships are used or 80 companies' corporate memberships are used. It's a criteria for doing this stuff. Has to be in operation for more than 3 years, or 3 or more years. Demonstrate that there is significant deployment and that there's no licensing fee. Open international voluntary standards organizations are defined as international organizations that plan, develop, or establish voluntary standards. I wonder what that means, because it doesn't mean what we think voluntary means. We're not even recognized as being capable of volition. Open to any person or organization of any nationality on equitable terms. So that's the main thing. It has to be, it's open, but it has to be done on equitable terms. I'm going to assume that they're talking about courts of equity, where essentially speaking, it's not open at all. They're just saying it's open, but naturally, if you have terms dictated to whether it to its openness, then it's not open, right? There's a special privilege required to enter into that. And that makes no claim to compel. That's the kicker right there. You can't make any claim to compel, so you have to compel either in action or through coded language, the sort of iron fist clothed in a velvet glove type of deal. Membership must include individuals or companies primarily located in at least 3 different geographic regions and at least 2 different countries within each of those geographic regions. That's not convoluted. Any organization that believes it satisfies the SDO qualifications set forth above may apply in writing to the Protocol Council to become a party to this MOU. In order for an organization to become a party to this MOU, all then existing MOU signatories must agree that such organization qualifies as an SDO. Rejected applicants can appeal to the ICANN board, which may override such a rejection if the ICANN board finds by at least 2/3 majority vote, or 2/3 vote, not majority, but that's basically the same thing, that the organization meets the SDO criteria set forth above. Any organization that is accepted as an SDO under this MOU may execute a copy of this MOU and agree to be bound by all of its terms and conditions upon which it shall be considered a signing SDO for all purposes under this MOU. 14th day of July 1999. Interim President Michael W. Roberts for ICANN. The Internet Engineering Task Force Chair. The International Telecommunications Union Director. Ooh. And this guy's name is Haolin Zhao. That's nice. World Wide Web Consortium. HTTP Activity Lead. Henrik Fristik Nielsen. European Telecommunications Standards Institute, the Deputy Director General, Bridget Cosgrave. The editor's address is at Harvard University, a Scott Bradner. And this is a non-protocol document, allegedly. And except as needed for the purpose of developing internet standards, in which case the procedures for copyrights defined in the internet standards process must be followed. The limited permissions granted above are perpetual and will not be revoked by the Internet Society or its successors or assigns. Currently provided, the funding is currently provided by the Internet Society. And of course, in the next document, we're going to find out that that statement's absolutely meaningless. The next document is Uh, ICANN address supporting organization ASO MLU. This lists the number resource organization NRO and the ASO in ICANN bylaws, defining roles and processes supporting global policy development, and lists the internet addressing community, whatever that is, and new RIRs. I don't know what RIR stands for. That's Romeo India Romeo. The ASO Address Council shall consist of the members of the NRO Number Council. ASO Address Council is responsible for a role in global policy development, recommendations on new RIRs, defining procedures for selection of individuals to serve on other ICANN bodies, in particular on the ICANN board. Number resource allocation policy. Now here's interesting. This next paragraph starts with the strange running together of two words. We have their responsibilities run together, like one word. Council chair run together, one word, and procedures shall run together as one word. The ASO Address Council shall admit liaisons from emerging regional internet registries and liaisons from other ICANN entities, which will have liaison agreements. That's nice. Address Council members shall, however, at their request, be reimbursed by the NRO for actual necessary and reasonable travel and subsistence expenses incurred by them in the performance of their duties. So, of course, as usual, that's their quote-unquote payment method. Arbitration will be according to ICC, which is the International Criminal Court, I think, in the jurisdiction of Bermuda or another location as is agreed. The location of the arbitration shall not decide the laws to be applied. From the date of signature of this agreement supersedes and replaces the MOU signed between ICANN, APNIC, ARIN, and RIPE NCC 18 October 1999, amended in January 2001, and subsequent inclusion of LACNIC by Joinder in October 2002. The non-exercise of or delay in exercising any power or right of a party does not operate as a waiver of that power or right, nor does any single exercise of a power or right to preclude any other or further exercise of it, or the exercise of any other power or right. A power or right may not be waived in writing signed by the party to be bound by the waiver. No party may transfer or assign any or all of its interests, rights, or obligation arising under this MOU without the prior written consent of each party to this MOU. So we have Paul Wilson, chair of the Number Resource Organization, and also Paul Wilson, director of the Asia Pacific Network Information Center, whatever the hell that is. The ICANN is Dr. Paul Twomey, president and chief executive officer. American Registry for Internet Numbers, Raymond A. Plzak, or PLZAK, president and chief executive officer. Latin American and Caribbean Internet Addresses Registry, Raul Echevarria, Echevarria, executive registry, or executive director, CEO, at the Réseau Européen Network Coordination, Axel Pollack, managing director. Oh, and that's also got the word center. Attachment A, Global Policy Development Process. Global policy is described in Section 5 of the ASO MOU. ASO Address Council is described in Section 3 of the ASO MOU. Here it uses the word fora, which I found in other documents. It's very strange. I've only heard the term fora used in the context of flora and fauna. Here they're using the word fora. In those cases where the advocate of the proposed policy cannot travel to a particular RIR public policy meeting, then the RIR shall appoint a person to present the proposal at the meeting. And I expect that that's done quite rather a lot, because most of this stuff's done under the cover of something, and the real people pulling the strings and doing this stuff are hiding under fictitious entities and identities, acting as a quote assistant or deputy or interim or representative of, which is of course how most attorneys operate. They go around doing things in the name of so and so, and they do whatever they want simply by saying they're representing someone. Within 60 days after the NRO Executive Council has advised the Address Council that global policy proposal has been adopted by all the regions, the Address Council shall either A. pass it to ICANN for ratification as a global policy, the process continues to step 7, or B. advise the NRO Executive Council that the Address Council has concerns as an outcome of its review. If the ICANN board takes no action, that is, fails to take actions A, B, or C in step 9, within the 60-day window, the proposed policy is deemed to be accepted by the ICANN board and it becomes global policy. Wasn't that nice? They just decided one day that they were going to control everything, and that they that the rest of us out there are irrelevant. All global policies in full force and effect on the day this agreement is executed, shall continue in full force and effect until specifically superseded by global policy outcomes from the process described here. Isn't that nice? All, quote, global policies. Of course, I wonder how many of those global policies they just tack that line on to, no matter who made it or who's doing it, and just supersede it, such as the U.S. Constitution. Address Council transition. The 2 shortest serving Address Council members from each region will be appointed to the NRO Number Council. Upon expiration in 2004, the seat of the largest serving Address Council member in each region, the respective RIR board will appoint a 3rd member of the NRO Number Council by method of its own choosing. Alright, in this next document that we're looking at, the Inter-American Telecommunication Commission, Organization of American States, and OAS General Secretariat, represented by Mr. Clovis Batista. And then there's ICANN, represented by Dr. Paul Twomey, Twomey. ICANN is a public benefit, not-for-profit corporation with its head office located at 4676 Admiralty Way, Suite 330, Marina Del Rey, California, in the United States of America. Now that's interesting because in the previous documents, it always had a Los Angeles address. And then, of course, we've got Harvard and other typical types of entities involved in this nonsense. The parties shall send to each other their documents and publications relating to programs and activities set out in Annex 1, except for those that are subject to special restrictions. Subject to 2.4, within this agreement, work areas in Annex 1, each party will make available to the other copies of working documents on request and free of royalties. Each party shall strictly limit the dissemination of documents it receives from the other to its participants and solely for the purpose of technical activities relating to each party's work program. All copyright and other intellectual and industrial rights in those documents and any copies thereof shall remain with the originating party. Love how they always hide behind this like property word, personal property, private property, and they can do whatever the hell they want based off of property and they declare the rest of us and our belongings as their property, meaning they can do whatever the hell they want because it's quote unquote their property. This stuff's ridiculous. The parties undertake to make every endeavor to use electronic document handling mechanisms in their exchange of documents, to the extent permitted under their respective applicable rules and regulations. The parties shall invite each other to send an observer to their respective meetings. To send an observer. What does that sound like? Where matters of potential interest in the agreed work or in Annex 1 are to be discussed. Correspondence between the parties shall be conducted in English or Spanish, depending on the case. The office within CITEL, that's Charlie India, Tango, Echo Lima, Responsible for carrying out and coordinating its obligations under this agreement is the Secretariat of CITEL. All notice for CITEL in relation to this agreement shall be sent to Executive Secretary CITEL, General Secretariat of the Organization of American States, 1889 F Street, Northwest, Washington, D.C. 20006. Dr. Paul Twomey, CEO and President, and Teresa Swinehart, VP Global and Strategic Partnerships, ICANN, and then there's the Marina Del Rey, California address again. This is an interesting part. Privileges and immunities. This is, exactly what you'd expect. Nothing expressly stated or implied in this agreement is to operate as a waiver of the privileges and immunities of the OAS and its origins, including CITEL and the OAS General Secretariat and their personnel, under the relevant agreements on privileges and immunities and under international law. Love that stupid word they use a lot. International law. In Washington, D.C., United States of America, on this 19th day of December of 2007, Dr. Paul Twomey and Mr. Clovis Baptista. Now the dates are different. For the Dr. Paul Twomey, we have September 1st, 2008. And for Mr. Clovis Baptista, Washington, D.C., we have December 19th, 2007. Now the location for the Dr. Paul Twomey is Sydney. And I'm going to assume that that's Sydney, Australia, which is interesting. In Annex 1, we have discussions related to the Global Internet System of Unique Identifiers in relation to domain names, forming a system referred to as DNS. Internet Protocol IP addresses and Autonomous System AS numbers, and protocol port and parameter numbers. Discussions related to the operational stability, reliability, security, and global interoperability of the Internet. Discussions reflecting the functional, geographic, and cultural diversity of the Internet. Well, isn't that nice that they just fixed all that stuff for us? Oh, we don't have to do it. They're taking care of it. Just, take control of everything as a quote property. Okay, so this next document that we're going to be looking at is titled Letter of Intent between the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, and the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, 16th September 2010. United Nations Educational Scientific Organization, UNESCO, I said that. The main objective of the joint project is for UNESCO to provide assistance to its member states by creating an IDN, lowercase cc, uppercase TLD, Cyrillic country names and abbreviations reference table for countries whose official languages are based on Cyrillic script. UNESCO and ICANN agree that this letter of intent does not limit ICANN from working with other stakeholders in similar projects, nor are UNESCO and or ICANN foreclosed, it's an interesting use of that word, from pursuing the creation of reference tables or the provision of other linguistics expertise to countries whose official languages are based in scripts other than Cyrillic. Now it states a IDN CCTLD reference table and IDN CCTLD strings, IDN CCTLD Cyrillic country names abbreviations reference table, IDN CCTLD fast track process, and that's a IDN India Delta November space lowercase c, so that's Charlie Charlie in lowercase, and then without a space, uppercase T Tango L Lima and D Delta. For UNESCO, we've got Mr. Indrajit Banerjee, Information Society Division, France, and a Mr. Bahar Esmet, Middle East, with a copy to the Office of the General Counsel. And here for ICANN it lists Marina Del Rey, address from the last one. For UNESCO it lists 1 Rue Miolis, Rue meaning street, 75732 Paris, France. However, the signatories, those are the points of contact. The signatories are Mr. Janis Karklins, that looks kind of like a Polish name, September 16th, 2010. Despite the fact that it says date and place of signature, no place is provided. ICANN is Mr. Rod Backstrom. Again, September 16, 2010, but no place provided. And then that's it for that document. The next document is a cooperation agreement between ICANN and UNESCO. It's represented by Mr. Kurt Eric Lindqvist, President CEO ICANN. Now this is referencing the LA address for ICANN. And then represented by Ms. Audrey Azoulay, Director General UNESCO, 7 Place de Fontenoy, 75352 Paris, France. UNESCO's current program, spelled with 2 M's and an E. Priorities include the promotion of multi-stakeholder partnerships to foster access and free flow of information and knowledge established in line with World Summit on the Information Society. Outcomes, as well as the promotion of linguistic diversity and multilingualism, with a specific attention to the indigenous languages and scripts, and UNESCO grants high priority to these program priorities. Parties understand the need to amend the cooperation agreement signed on 10 December 2009 to reflect the changed context, particularly the advancements of internationalized domain names, IDNs, and top-level domain TLD names for internet accessibility and inclusivity, as well as the need for universal acceptance, UA, of all valid domain names and email addresses. The parties will ensure that their collaboration occurs at the appropriate level within their organizations in accordance with relevant procedures, and UNESCO will consult national governments and authorities where appropriate. The parties will negotiate to finalize the terms of any subsequent agreements that are required to give effect to a specific project or the undertaking set out in this agreement. So, getting rid of all that gobbledygook, you break it down to the simple functional mentions here. Essentially speaking, you're going to have, according to this agreement, certain, quote, integrated departments within the entities that are operating as the specific cover identities, and only those cover identities can be used for them telling, quote, national governments and whatnot what to do. Here, of course, it says consult, but that really means order and tell them to do stuff. And only according to these documents, specific departments within those entities can do that as their cover story. So it's sort of like if you were writing down an operational document and you wrote into the operational document that only my Office of Strategic Planning is allowed to consult based off of this particular plan or program that I'm deciding to do. Which basically just means that when you send correspondence from your, quote, organization to do something, you just tap that heading, Office of Strategic Planning or whatever, and that's it. It's your cover story. Sort of a security mechanism to ensure that the people receiving it also know that it's coming from the, quote, proper originating authority rather than somebody from a different, quote unquote, department. enhance capacities to cultivate a knowledgeable and competent community that can participate in internet governance and policy discussions by jointly developing online self-paced courses on IDNs and UA for promoting multilingualism in cyberspace. Develop solutions to expand ways to integrate the internet and digital technologies into sustainable development initiatives by promoting access to multilingual content using IDNs and their UA. The parties will conclude for each agreed concrete project an appropriate project agreement, if any, stipulating the budget and the implementation of modalities for the activity in question, including provisions for monitoring and reporting. Where the parties agree, this may be done with reference to the present agreement by an exchange of letters detailing the deliverables under the activity and the respective responsibilities and obligations of the parties. The eventual attribution of and use of the parties of the intellectual property results in rights generated by the project, if applicable. If ICANN provides a financial contribution pursuant to a project agreement as referenced in Article 4, UNESCO will disperse the funds in the framework of the present agreement and in accordance with UNESCO's financial rules and regulations, including those pertaining to the project support costs. I bet UNESCO's behind that. Internet Society, a group or institution that provides more quote-unquote funding as well. UNESCO shall not commit any funds before ICANN makes the corresponding deposits into the relevant bank account and as agreed to in the relevant project agreement. When required, UNESCO and ICANN will form a consultation mechanism made up of representatives from each party, which will be responsible for formulating, planning, and monitoring the development and progress of the joint projects. I think that's interesting when they say representatives from each party. Sort of like most people think of the Democratic Republican parties, etc. But those are in fact similar institutions. There we go. So Tawfiq Jelassi, or Helassi, is listed Director AI. Well, that's A.I. I don't think they're trying to use that stupid word that we hear every day now for artificial intelligence. Division for Digital Inclusion Policies and Digital Transformation. 7 Place de Fontenoy, SP for Paris. ICANN has Sarmad Hussein, Senior Director, IDN and UA Programs, with required copies to the Office of the General Counsel. It remains in force until 31st December 2032. Status of UNESCO. Supporting the objectives of UNESCO and of the United Nations Organization, ICANN will respect the status of UNESCO as an intergovernmental organization of the United Nations system with its own distinct constitution. ICANN confirms that it is not directly involved in the production of goods or the delivery of services which would be opposed to the objectives and principles of UNESCO, the United Nations Organization, or other institutions of the United Nations system. Well, that's obviously where their allegiances lie, and they are traitors and enemies. Any dispute shall be arbitrated according to the rules defined by UNCITRAL, United Nations Commissions on International Trade Law. Isn't that nice that they're controlling the quote-unquote global internet, and that they were, deemed to be privatized by the Department of Commerce or some nonsense like that. Mr. Kurt Eric Lindqvist signed 9th of January 2025, and Audrey Azoulay signed 18th of December 2024. Of course, those just look like photocopy auto pen type of deal. Now, this last document, even though that that document we just read was signed earlier, this next document is very technical, and I think sufficiently describes for those with with good technical understanding of how the internet actually works and elements of the internet with software programming and whatnot. This document is the technical document, which describes that root server based processes. This is from 6th of October 2020. It lists an RSSAC, Romeo Sierra Alpha Charlie, or RSAC, or RSSAC, whatever. The Root Server System Governance Working Group. It also lists ICANN, of course, the ICANN board, and the Internet Architecture Board. They love to just spin up all these fictitious organizations and other nonsense. The Public Technical Identifiers, or PTI. Now, VeriSign entered into an agreement with ICANN to continue to perform the root zone maintainer functions. Option 4. The service is dependent on certain considerations, including those offered by ICANN via subcontracts to the IANA and the RZM. This note describes what the RSOs can offer within the context of an appropriate exchange of LOIs. The RSSAC recommends the GWG conduct a detailed legal analysis on these and potentially other options to determine the best option. Funding will be made available for operators willing to sign a contract with a contract company, given that there likely are some operators receiving funding and some are not. In the RSSAC's opinion, when a root server operator no longer receives funding, it should continue to be able to provide service but default to MOU type of agreement. If an RSO is receiving funding, the RSSAC suggests payment for its services to be paid at least quarterly, and that the amounts of payments and the terms of the contract be individually negotiated by the root server operator and contract company. Root Zone Administrator, RZA. The Root Zone Administrator manages the data contained within the root zone, which involves assigning the operators of top-level domains such as .uk and .com, and maintaining their technical and administrative details. Root Zone Maintainer, or RZM, the organization/entity responsible for accepting service data from the Root Zone Administrator, formatting it into zone file format, cryptographically signing it using the zone signing key for the root zone, and putting it into root zone distribution system. It is currently operated by VeriSign via a service agreement with ICANN. Root server operator, an organization responsible for managing the root service on IP addresses specified in the root zone and the root hints file. The DNS name associated with the root server operator that appears in the root zone and root hints file, for example, c.rootservers.net or c.root-servers.net, is the root server identifier associated with the root server managed by Cogent at the time this document was published. The operation of the DNS root name server designated as blank space underscore dot root dash servers.net in the DNS root zone and elsewhere has been operated by root server operator. In its role for coordinating root zone management, ICANN has entered into an agreement with VeriSign and contracting VeriSign to continue to perform the root zone maintainer functions, which with respect to root server related activities are to edit, generate, and sign the root zone file, publish the root zone file and rootservers.net zone file to a root zone file distribution server, promptly notify the root server operator of the availability of new versions of the root zone file and root-servers.net zone file, promptly respond to requests from root server operator to transfer the root zone file and root servers or root-servers.net zone file from a VeriSign root zone file distribution server. Yikes. Service provided by contract company. You've got those greater than and less than brackets. Add contract company's service here. So it's a fill in the blank type of deal. And it looks like it's a fill in the blank online type of deal, not just blank space. Best current practice RFCs maintained by the Internet Engineering Task Force. And here we've got a breakdown of the IPv4 names, service level expectations for root server operators. So there's some technical tables there. The remediation period for rogue behavior should be 48 hours. The remediation period for catastrophic technical shutdown should be 14 calendar days. The remediation period for falling below MOU/LOI performance should be 30 calendar days, assuming the PMMF is monitoring the system near real time. The remediation period starts when the RSO is notified of the non-conformity. You love that word, non-conformity? The RSSAC confirms the root server operator be removed from the root source files, root zone, root-servers.net zone, root hints file if and when the root server operator failed to meet the performance requirements specified by the MOU/LOI. In addition, the root server operator fails the remediation process, or the root server operator goes rogue by serving incorrect root zones and fails the remediation process, or the root server operator suffers a catastrophic technical shutdown and fails the remediation process. And that's it.